this people of the audience, subscribers and non-subscribers, will be a very long and painful video. I'm warning you now because this man, Niall Gardner, is full of absolute rubbish. So I'm going to warn you now, you best have some tea ready or some coffee or hot drink of your choice because this is going to be painful. Title: American liberal elites are waking up to the benefits of Brexit. It's already hurt me. Already hurt me. Let's see. Bitter Remainers love to paint Britain as isolated and parochial, as though leaving the EU was a supreme act of harakiri on the international stage. Now, harakiri means seppuku, means like suicide, basically. An act of self-destruction, political harakiri. I would have gone with the word seppuku, to be honest. But I think this is more of a political term, but seppuku is a much more grim term. But apparently they can mean the same thing. Seppuku is sometimes referred to as harakiri. There you go. Which it is, to be fair, economically anyways. The New York Times and the Washington Post, they are liberally elite papers. Same with the Telegraph, though, really. Publishing ludicrously apocalyptic pieces alleging a downward spiral of the British decline after separating from Brussels, which, we're not doing too hot, my friend. The economy is not doing that great. Let's be real here. Exports are struggling to get out via the Dover-Calais crossing. Imports were struggling to get in via the Dover-Calais crossing. So, not looking too good, but let's see what this genius has to say, huh? Some Brexit opponents in the United States are now changing their tune in the wake of the UK's tough stance over Ukraine. Now, let's not forget here, okay? The EU does not decide British foreign policy. The UK decides British foreign policy. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, EU member states were against it. Did the EU stop us? No. We were allowed to go in with the Americans. So this argument that, now we can, suddenly we can do this, we can suddenly, make our own foreign policy decisions thanks to Brexit, it's an absolute myth of the highest order. The crisis has been a wake-up call for those in the United States who believe that the European Union would emerge as a powerful global power working closely with its American allies. There's the problem right there. So what they want is the EU to be at America's side. When America wants war, the EU are meant to say, let's go. That's the key problem here. The European Union is still a very powerful global power. It is. The French and the Germans are actively talking to the Russians to stop. Sorry about that, minor distraction. So, key point being is that what the Americans wanted was an EU that would adhere to what the US wants. But the EU were never going to be that. The EU want to be their own global power, which, makes sense. At the end of the day, it makes perfect sense. That's why, this talk of an EU army appears once in a while. So, far from mocking the new Brexit era, once sceptical Washington policy experts are finally starting to realise that America's partnership with the United Kingdom will be strengthened, not weakened. When, again, let's not forget here, the British government went to, helped the Americans in Iraq. The EU didn't. I don't think the EU actually voted on this because the EU doesn't decide a country's foreign policy. Individual member states decide their foreign policy. Anthony Gardner, the former US ambassador to the European Union under Barack Obama, said, as bad as Brexit has been, and I fully admit that a significant upside, the UK can act swiftly in foreign affairs, including Ukraine, rather than being dragged into endless EU waffle, which simply, again, is not true. We're not dragged into EU waffle. The EU does try and decide as a bloc of things to do, but they can do things individually. Now, let's not forget Hungary got its own vaccines from Russia. The EU didn't stop them doing that, did they? Absolute joke. It's clearly Americans don't understand the EU either. Even though this guy's a former USA ambassador to the European Union, does not understand that if countries individually wanted to do something against Ukraine, they can. If they want to put up sanctions, they can. Gardner is not alone expressing this view. Ryan Evans, founder of the influential War on the Rocks national security site, tweeted, I was against Brexit, but it's interesting that some of the same people who predicted Brexit will lead to a Britain less relevant in the global affairs today are deriding the Johnson government for playing a muscular role in the Ukraine crisis, because this is what the Americans want. They want countries that are going to be loyal to them in conflict. That's the only reason why these guys are giving the UK so much credit. And let's be real here, the only reason the UK is playing this tough guy role is because Johnson's in a crisis. And the one thing that rallies people around the leader is a conflict. That's why he's playing this. Liz Truss, especially because she has ambitions to be the next Prime Minister. So she's trying to do that Thatcher thing where she's taking pictures on tanks, warning Putin, don't you dare step in Ukraine. What are you going to do, Liz? Are you going to the front lines in your private plane? Are you going to shoot someone? What are you going to do? The EU's response to Ukraine has been a massive disappointment on the state side of the Atlantic. You see, the framing of this article is, the EU are really disappointing America. America are not angry. They're just disappointed. Who cares? The EU don't owe the Americans anything. Its two biggest powers, Berlin and Paris, have both shamelessly kowtowed to Putin, which again is simply untrue. And we're going to actually debunk these 2 points this guy's made here. That's why I've got them separated out in different colours. Russian forces have amassed on the border with Ukraine, probably one of the few factual statements this gentleman actually makes, while the new German government has bent over backwards to appease Moscow and refuses to support tougher sanctions and the shipment of defensive weapons to Ukraine. Now, I can't talk about the tougher sanctions bit. Russia and Germany do rely on each other for trade, so that's obviously a problem for Germany. But if we actually look at this, Germany has a long-standing policy of banning weapon exports to conflict zones because of concerns over World War II and Nazi atrocities. Germany has a long-standing policy of banning weapons exports to conflict zones. How strongly Germany adhered to these rules, we'd have to look at specifics. Allies fume at German ban of arms exports to Saudi Arabia, for example, in 2019, when there were atrocities carried out by the Saudis. Point being is that this is from his own paper, The Telegraph. His own paper, The Telegraph, have said this, and he's still going over the same thing of, this is Germany once again doing this dumb thing. Sorry about that. Again, big cut in the video. But, Germany has a long-standing policy of banning weapon exports to conflict zones. They don't even allow, by the looks of it, weapons to go through Germany to go to their destination. So this argument this gentleman's making, once again, of, Germany doing a favour to Russia by stopping weapon exports going to Ukraine is a joke. Debunked. Now, this one's even more egregious. This one, I had to read about 4 or 5 different articles to actually understand what this man was talking about and then figure out, once again, shock, he is wrong. So the French are now talking about the EU forming a security pact with the Russians, threatening to split the NATO alliance down the middle, which the French actually aren't doing. So we've got here, the French, if anything, have decided to raise tensions. A former Greek minister in foreign affairs, Nikos Kotzias, criticising the US-Greece Mutual Defence Cooperation Agreement and the French-Greece Defence and Security Agreement. The former Greek minister said that the country must instead opt for multi-dimensional foreign policy that would boost diplomacy with East and West, talking about Russia and Russia and the West essentially. And you've got Macron, being concerned about being misinterpreted about his comments, saying that France's plan to possibly deploy troops on NATO's eastern flank as rise of a Russian attack on Ukraine can be seen in a bid to clarify the misunderstandings created by French President Emmanuel Macron, who recently called for the EU to forge its own security pact with Russia. He apparently caused some misunderstandings. Potentially, he misspoke. I don't know if he said this in French or in English, so it could be a translation issue. Macron, on Wednesday, the 19th of January, expressed France's readiness to go further and within the framework of NATO to commit to new missions, particularly in Romania. The move was welcomed by the Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, I think that's an L, who on Thursday said this meant the Romanian-France strategic partnership will thus be strengthened on the eastern flank in the Black Sea region. Romania, a NATO member since 2004, which already hosts around 1,000 US troops, also said it welcomed more American soldiers, clarifying the misunderstanding. Experts say this move will help clarify misunderstandings created by Macron most recently with his calls for the EU to forge its own security pact with Russia, thinking that they're making some sort of new security arrangements, a non-aggression pact of some sort, which would, go against NATO, which by some inside the bloc have been perceived as a break with the US calls for unity and ongoing efforts to halt the possible a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. They come at the time as Paris has been pushing for unifying the 27 members around the bloc's defence. Not an EU army per se, but coming up with a strategic plan for the EU, namely the EU's upcoming strategic compass. The decision is part of a package of reassurance and solidarity measures decided by the Allies in recent weeks to show Moscow that NATO's military posture is robust. And if dialogue fails, Allies will be ready to respond. And he's trying to bring the EU together to help push that message to the Russians. Sorry, this is going to be a long debug point. There's a lot to talk about with this one. French President Macron called on fellow members of the European Union to work together to draw up proposals for a new security deal with Russia. In the coming weeks, involving a frank dialogue with Moscow, saying that they're going to have open talks and discuss with Russia the problems the French and other countries have with the Russians. Speaking amid growing worries over Russian military build-up at Ukraine's border, Macron did not spell out what the new stability and security order he is seeking could entail, but said it must ensure Europe defends its interests. We will make sure that Europe makes its unique and strong voice heard. And that's what Macron is trying to do. He's trying to get Europe to the table, because the main problem is discussions are mainly happening between the US and Russia. Some European states fear that they are being bypassed and their security concerns ignored, as Russia deals directly with Washington in security talks over the continent, when really should include European countries in that, with some coordination with the EU. It is good that Europeans and the United States coordinate, but it's necessary that Europeans conduct their own dialogue, Macron said. We must put together a joint proposal, a joint vision, a new security and stability order for Europe. Europeans would share that proposal with NATO before discussing with Russia, so they would ask for NATO's permission for any proposals, because the last thing, Macron really wants to do is split NATO, because that would further embolden the Russians. But also what he doesn't want is more Russian aggression. A proponent of the EU having its own strategic autonomy in the field of defence, Macron added that the bloc must bring itself to a position to make sure it can be respected, including by making sure it's not too dependent on Russia for its energy supplies. So not only are they not kowtowing to Russia, France and other EU member states are going out of their way to make sure they are less energy dependent on Russia, which is something the UK really cannot do, considering that we are very vulnerable to fluctuating energy prices because we are out of the EU's internal energy market, and the fact that we have such low stockpiles in the UK. So France are actually doing something productive whilst we're not. The Express were running articles, I think it was them, talking about how Russia have come to the rescue to save us from extraordinary high energy prices. Which one of those is kowtowing to Russia? This guy. Macron, who faces an election in 3 months, so he really can't show weakness here, said that France and Germany want to continue seeking a solution to the tensions over Ukraine, which is something we're actually going to speak about in a moment. A bid by Macron for better ties between the EU and Russia in July 2019 failed, as former Soviet Baltic countries feared a Russian trap to win concessions from the bloc. So, it shows you how the EU worked, that, former Baltic countries actually scuppered these talks in 2019 because they were very wary of Russia. Maybe they didn't trust Russia, or maybe they still don't. The EU must also propose a new alliance to African countries, he said, adding that EU and African countries would discuss it at a summit in February. So it'd be interesting to see what comes of this. And we go to one of our final points on this point, which is that political advisors from Russia, Ukraine, Germany and France have agreed to an unconditional observance of the ceasefire in eastern Ukraine. Another meeting between the four countries will be held in Berlin in 2 weeks. So you can actually see the fruits of the work of the Germans and the French here by getting a ceasefire, an unconditional observance of the ceasefire in eastern Ukraine. Now you tell me, this guy, right? Forget his name, I don't care. You tell me, Telegraph writer, okay? How is it that these countries have so-called kowtowed to Russia, who are actively seeking to get away from Russian dependency, right, for energy, have managed to get a further observance of the ceasefire in eastern Ukraine, whilst the British have achieved nothing in this regard apart from saber rattling? Because that's all we seem to understand under the Johnson administration. Riddle me that, big man. Honestly, the propaganda these people come out with, right, is just insane. Because you know what? Some of it is pretty good. Those 2 points there, pretty good, until you actually research and you realise he's full of rubbish. This will appeal to, people, the faux intellectuals who think they're smart in the right wing, who are absolute clowns. In contrast, the Johnson administration has been on the forefront of arming Ukraine. Geez, Britain loves selling guns, don't we? This is real leadership, calling out the Russians and, saying, oh, we don't want a Russian puppet in Ukraine, saber rattling and things like that. Which, I'm not against arming Ukraine because they are, potentially they will be in a conflict with Russia. Point being is that this is not the way to stop a war from breaking out, though, is it? This is real leadership, arming, saber rattling, raising conflict, tensions, the real leadership, at a time when much of Europe is either paralysed over Ukraine or actively appeasing the Russian bear, when that's simply not the case. There is hope in Congress and in Washington's influential think tanks that the British approach may help stiffen the spine as well as of the Biden administration, because they want Biden to be tough, because that's how these guys are going to make money, through defense contracts and, speaking fees on CNN and MSNBC, Fox. That's how these guys are going to make money. That's why they want a war with Russia. Foreign Secretary Liz has been tougher and more vocal in warning the Kremlin over the consequences of invading Ukraine than her US counterpart Anthony Blinken. Do you know why? Because Blinken wants to lower tensions, whilst Liz Truss looks to be actively raising tensions, which against a nuclear superpower you really, really do not want to be doing. President Biden's bizarre talk last week of a possible minor incursion, which is something Liz Truss mentioned as well, didn't she? What's the difference between an incursion and an invasion? Liz Truss really couldn't answer it because they're both really similar. By the Russians in Ukraine, which was loudly attacked by the Ukrainian government, freed of the shackles of Brussels, Brexit Britain is a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. Cool, let's go slap Russia then. Let's go, on our own, yeah, we'll go slap Russia. Let's go. Come on, big man, me and you in the trenches. Let's go. Oh wait, that's not going to happen though, is it? Because Brexit Britain isn't a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. We're a joke. We're an absolute laughingstock. The British are leading again. No, we're not though, because we're causing more tensions. We really are. We're not helping the situation at all. These people don't understand how international diplomacy works. European leaders are projecting weakness and division. No, they're not. They're trying to get unity in order to stop the Russians. That's what they're trying to do. European leaders are projecting weakness, I've mentioned that. Great Britain is standing shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine. I mean, we're really not though, are we? We're really not. Because if Ukraine is invaded, what are we going to do? Probably nothing. Unless we get an international coalition together. Because in a war, I don't think Britain would do very well against the Russians, let's be real. With the people of Ukraine as they face the prospect of invasion and occupation by a brutal aggressor, which I'm very much against the Russians, but this is not the way to stop a conflict from breaking out, saber rattling with them. There has to be consequences in place if Russia does invade Ukraine. I'm absolutely for that, but your first port of call of stopping a war is stopping war from breaking out. The great general wins a war without firing a single arrow. That's the way we should be going about this, without war breaking out. This guy's former boss, Margaret Thatcher, would have applauded her stance, the stance her nation is taking today, yeah, until we actually have to scrap with Russia. That sounds like fun. Not sure how long this video's gone for. Probably a while. Still some cuts I have to make, though, because we had some distractions. But, yeah, this guy, Neil Gardner, absolute joker he is. Genuinely, these people physically cause me pain. And the worst thing is, right, if you want to talk about who's kowtowing to the Russians, right, which party is taking loads of Russian money? Labour's asked the Conservatives what checks the party has made on donations received from Russian-linked individuals, and if it could be sure that no cash came from the Kremlin or other hostile to the UK. And let's be real here, the Russians did actively want Brexit. The degree to which their effectiveness in the campaigns can be debated. And I'll happily debate that with anyone. Because if it's just memes and bot farms, you ain't going to get anywhere. Point being is that the Tories actively took, and I think still may actively take, Russian money. The questions follow revelations about a group of wealthy donors who have given money to the Tories and have business links to Russia or other wealthy Russians. The UK has done very little to implement the Magnitsky Act, which I think is aimed to stop Russian money and deal with people who are linked to a crime. Russians linked to crimes. But the UK has done very little in that regard because I think it's because the Tory party do take Russian money and it does have an influence. But, you're not allowed to say that bit out loud, really. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.